Mornings with Will on 531 VI.
It's 11 minutes past 8 o'clock. Each week we're joined by a Pacific MP, and this week we're joined by Labour's Deputy Leader Carmel Sepuloni. Back with us. Malolile, welcome in.
Malolile, thank you for having me again.
Likewise, thanks for being with us. Hey, look, simple question I want to start off with. Are police good or bad for society?
They're integral for society. They keep us safe, and we respect the work that they undertake.
The reason I ask, of course, is because Green MP Tamitha Paul's gotten herself in a bit of hot water for quotes suggesting that a visible police presence makes people feel more on edge. That's what she's heard from her constituents in Wellington Central. I'm a frequent user of Courtney Place, there's no denying. I like and I feel comfortable when I've got a police presence there at night. What do you make of the comments?
I don't share Tamitha's view. Not sure where that comes from, because certainly when I think about the people that I've spoken to, in terms of their safety and having an active police presence, it's always welcomed.
Your leader, Pacificans, didn't mince his words, saying that the comments were in fact stupid. Do you echo that sentiment?
I think that they were very silly comments, and as I said, I'm not sure where they came from.
Final question on that. Does that perhaps show, this is a potential coalition partner come the next election, the stark differences when it comes to law and order between Labour and the Green Party? It seems as though parties on the extreme left and parties on the extreme right like to think that we live in a utopia.
I'm not sure if Tamitha's view reflects her whole party. To be honest, she is a newer MP, and so I'm not sure whether or not she thought she had some kind of context in which to share those views. But we're not going to agree on everything, that's for sure. However, this is quite an extreme difference. But I'm not sure whether they are her party's views or they are her individual views. And I think that's probably something that needs to be asked.
Yeah. RMA reform now, the good old RMA reform. The coalition government harped on about it for ages, right back to the election. We've only really just got something this week. What's Labour's perspective on it, though?
Well, I mean, they scrapped what we did, and then they brought part of it back, but they didn't include the environmental considerations or any consideration of te tiriti. And so, of course, there is disappointment here. We've tried to take a bipartisan approach. Our spokesperson for the environment, Rachel Brooking, reached out in December 2023 and said, we're willing to work together on this to get it right because it's so important, but that offer hasn't been taken up. However, the offer still stands.
Yeah, I mean, you're not being opposition for the sake of being in opposition, right?
No, not at all. It is, we all want the best. We all hear the concerns that are raised with regards to the barriers in place to being able to get consents, get things moving, get shovels in the ground. And we know how important that is for our housing build, our infrastructure build. But at the same time, we take seriously the environmental considerations and we take seriously our obligation under Te Tiriti. And so we don't want to see those ignored in any version of the revised RMA, but they have been ignored.
Yeah, the Pacific People's Minister this week on the show believes, and maybe this is just for lack of a better phrase that's on my mind at the moment, a utopian view, that that's going to lead to better housing outcomes for our Pacific communities, who, of course, Stats NZ figures showed recently, we continue to be consigned to a life of renting because we're not getting into home ownership. Do you think that this RMA reform will lead to more Pacific people in homes, or is that wishful, doveful thinking?
I think that that's quite the stretch from the minister, actually. And I do think that our Pacific community not only want the houses to live in, but they want to make sure that our environment is not damaged in the process. And our people have a deep respect for tangata whenua here. We don't want to ignore provisions around te tiriti. We want to make sure that they are included here. And we know what happens when tangata whenua are not consulted, when they are not included. We actually end up with legislation and policy that is not effective, that is insufficient, that has not taken into consideration all of the factors that should have been taken into consideration from the get-go. So this is not a nice to do, nice to have. It is actually to ensure that we've got all the right measures in place. And I think Pacific people want that. I don't trust that because of these RMA changes that we're going to have more houses available to Pacific people. And I'd love to see the evidence that the minister was presented with that said that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, but what's the genuine truth here, though, in the sense of any successive government that's going to come in place, are they really going to lift our Pacific home ownership rates that much? Or have we really, is the horse bolted and we are, like I say, consigned to a life of renting?
We shouldn't give up. You know, that first generation of Pacific people that came to Aotearoa, they worked hard, they saved hard, and they bought homes. You know, my father with my mother was one of them. And so why should we give up on that dream? When we were in government, we did invest money into supporting Pacific home ownership. That hasn't been continued. It's not just about making the houses available. It is there are a range of things that need to happen here. There is financial literacy. There is debt reduction, because to be able to get that mortgage, then we need this. There is how we use KiwiSaver, and we made changes here so that you can consolidate your KiwiSaver to get that deposit, which is really important for Pasifika families who will often live in multi-generational situations. So there's a lot that can be done to support Pacific home ownership, but I don't think that this government think broadly or in the level of depth that is required to be able to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, let's turn our attention to another day, another moan about the school lunches program. There was a petition launched this week on the school lunches program. And I mean, I've made my view perhaps clear in the sense of perhaps we just need to move on from this, but I'm sure you do not share the same view.
Can't just move on, Will. This is indicative of what the government thinks of our children, the lack of value they're putting on them. We're talking about a program that was put in place out of recognition that we have too many children in this country that are not getting the nutrition or the food that they need. And so this was an opportunity to be able to address that issue. And now we've got a government that have taken funding away, that have provided our kids with lunches that are not adequate, that are in some instances, you know, a health and safety issue. And we want it to return to the program that we had established that was running effectively, instead of this shambles that has been created by David Seymour and supported by Erica Stanford and Christopher Luxon.
We just had the Chief Children's Commissioner on before you, Claire Ahmed, discussing what seems to be an anti-tamariki government. What I mean by that is you got the botched school lunches program, enforcing boot camps, although they don't really like to confess or call it that in that sense. They've also, you know, implemented harsher sentencing, as we've just seen. What do you make of the idea that it is anti-tamariki?
I feel like it is. They don't prioritise our children. They like to lay blame at the feet of parents, and therefore also condemning these children to poverty, to inequitable access to opportunities, because they're saying, well, these parents should be doing this, that, and the other, and if they haven't, then and they're judging those parents, and if they haven't, then it's not the government's responsibility. Well, it's like, what is the government's responsibility? So you'd choose to give $2.3 billion worth of tax breaks to landlords over funding the lunch and schools program to feed our kids? You know, choices, priorities. This government's priorities are clearly in the wrong place.
Look, let's go there very quickly, just with the changes. Oharu, Mana, Kapisi. I mean, you know, what do you make of it? I have to say, Greg O'Connor, for pure entertainment factor, I do enjoy the guy. But what else does Greg bring to the table?
Oh, he's an amazing MP on the ground. If you talk to his constituents, people I know that live in his electorate, they say that you know, basically Greg shows up to everything. He's supportive of his community. He is always there. He's highly visible. He's great with supporting constituents who have constituent cases. And so he is a much loved and respected local MP, and we shouldn't underestimate the importance of that.
Yeah. I mean, what loss will it be if those changes indeed go ahead for Labour?
Well, we've still got some, there could still be changes. These are draft recommendations. The boundaries will be finalised in August. For us as a political party and for all political parties, we haven't quite got to that point where we're choosing our candidates for particular seats. So there's a lot to do and a lot to go through in terms of process. But Chippy's made it clear that Greg is a respected member of our caucus, and we certainly want to see him back.
Yeah, no, I do get a chuckle out of the times when he is in front of media. Hey, look, it's just sprung to mind literally just before you go though. When we had Matua Winnie on the show this week, he, as always, launched into Labour during your time working together. Ironic a little bit, but he did mention Labour 30 times in his speech, his State of the Nation speech, and he's apparently ruled out working with you guys. Are you guys ruling him in or out? I'm confused on Labour's stance.
Oh, look, he's not. He's certainly not easy to work with. We haven't had any of those discussions, but I'll put on record that he's certainly not easy to work with. And I guess the fact that he mentioned Labour over 30 times in his State of the Nation speech, though, goes to show we are certainly having some impact on the government and on him. I mean, he could have spent that whole time talking about the government's track record and what they've delivered and what they've done for New Zealanders. But I don't think there was enough material there, Will. So instead, he spent the whole time attacking the former Labour government, trying to bring us into disrepute. There's a reason for that, and that is that we are an effective opposition. So we take that as a badge of honour.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just as I've said before, I enjoyed Chippy's speech in the sense it was more aspirational, and I feel as though I hate in State of the Nation speeches where it's just continuous attacks, and that's perhaps what we saw with Winston's. Thank you very much for your time as always. I live for these chats. You have a good rest of your day and a good weekend when you get to it, eh?
Thank you so much.